By the third night of the Great Frost, Frost Hollow Pack had almost disappeared beneath the white silence. Snow swallowed the outer walls, erased every scent trail, and smothered the pack link until wolves standing only yards apart could no longer feel one another. Inside the protected den, Mirith screamed as another contraction seized her. The pup was turned wrong. Tovin held the lantern with both hands while Velora worked to free it. Behind Illis's canvas curtain, baby Neris cried. Beside the stove, Brannick Voss lay shaking beneath blankets, his frost-bitten hands wrapped in wool. Then the moonwell slowed. The water spilling into the stone basin weakened to a thin, trembling stream. Before anyone could speak, a crack split the storm. Kaedren Thornwright turned toward the lodge doors. Another crack followed, wood twisting, rope tearing, moonwillow branches striking one another beyond the walls. "One of the north lashings," he said. Velora looked up from Mirith. Blood stained her hands to the wrists. If the barrier opens, the wind reaches the passage, and the passage, buried before dawn. A frightened growl traveled through the crowded lodge. Several wolves were already breathing too fast. One young male's claws pushed through his fingertips before his mother forced his hands beneath a blanket. Without the pack link, fear had nowhere to go except inward. If the doors vanished beneath the snow, panic would turn the lodge into a sealed den filled with involuntary shifts. Kaedren seized the repair bag beside the entrance and fastened the guide rope around his waist. Velora crossed the room and took the other end. Their hands met over the knot. For one heartbeat, her grip closed around his. "Send someone else," she said. "No one else knows where the barrier will break next. You may not find the posts. I set them deep. The storm has already buried one. Then I'll find the next." Another violent crack shook the lodge. Snow forced itself through the seams around the doors. Mirith cried out behind them. Tovin's voice trembled. "Luna! The pup!" Velora did not release the rope. Everything inside her demanded that she order Kaedren to remain. She was Luna. Her word could stop any wolf in Frost Hollow. But rank could not brace the Moonwillow wall. Strength could not replace knowledge. And Kaedren was the only wolf who understood what he had built. He pulled his hood over his face. "3 tugs if I need more line," he said. "2 when you are coming back." Kaedren opened the door. The great frost struck him so hard he vanished before taking his second step. Velora braced the rope around her forearm as it slid through her hands. 10 feet, 20, 30, then it jerked once. She waited for the second pull. Nothing came. "Kaedren!" Even an alpha's voice could not cross the white silence. 6 weeks earlier, the wolf whose survival now held an entire pack together had stood outside Frost Hollow's gates and begged its widowed Luna for a bucket of milk. 6 weeks earlier, Kaedren Thornwright reached Frost Hollow pulling a handcart with one cracked wheel and a handle bound together by rope. 10-month-old Neris rested against his shoulder, her small mouth searching weakly against the cloth of his coat. 7-year-old Tovin walked beside the wheel, silent and pale, no longer asking how much farther they had to go. 6 months had passed since Illis Fenweave died from birthing fever, and every road since then had ended the same way. One pack offered Kaedren work if he surrendered his pups. Another allowed them one night beside its fire before ordering them beyond the boundary stones. The third suggested Neris might survive if another family raised her. Kaedren left before they could repeat the offer. By the time Frost Hollow appeared through the trees, Tovin had stopped believing promises about tomorrow. Whenever food reached his hands, part of it disappeared into his coat. Kaedren saw it. He said nothing. Beyond Frost Hollow's gate, the main lodge doors faced the northwest. The moonwillow trees stood close enough to funnel snow toward the entrance. Winter meat rested on racks sunk into damp earth. The moonwell channel ran too near the surface, and narrow frost lines already marked the shrinking seams between the lodge timbers. A woman stood beside the livestock enclosure, breaking ice from the trough with the back of an axe. A leather ledger rested beneath her arm. She looked at the damaged cart, the exhausted father and the two hungry pups. What work do you know? Den frames, moonwells, storehouses, sledges, roofs, ward posts, winter barriers. Her gaze moved to Neris as the infant tried to suck the edge of Kaedren's collar. What do you need? Kaedren tightened his trembling arm around his daughter. Give my pups milk. Let us sleep somewhere out of the wind. I'll fix what winter is coming to break. Valora Reinhardt gave him no promise. She stepped forward and lifted Neris from his arms. The pups eat first, she said. Your claims can wait until morning. Inside the lodge, she warmed goat milk, diluted it carefully, and tested it against her wrist. Kaedren tried to hold the cup, but his hands would not remain steady. Valora supported its base without taking Neris from him. Tovin received stew and thick bread. He ate in silence, then pushed the remaining piece inside his coat. Valora noticed. She placed another slice beside his bowl, as though it had always been there. That evening, she opened the former foreman's room and carried down an unfinished cradle. Odric Hearthmark had built it before his death. One rail remained rough beneath the hand, because he had never finished sanding it. Neris slept there without crying. Tovin fell asleep with his fingers closed around the hidden bread. Before dawn, Valora found Kaedren's bed empty. He was outside Frost Hollow, not repairing anything, but studying every place where the previous winter had nearly destroyed it. Valora found Kaedren outside with no hammer in his hand. He had tied strips of wool beside the lodge doors and was watching them twist in the morning wind. One pointed inward, another curled sharply toward the sleeping dens. He moved next to the winter stores, drove a shovel beneath the lowest bundles, and lifted out meat wrapping darkened by moisture. Heat rose faintly from the packed layers. This is warming from beneath, he said. Leave it stacked like this, and rot will reach the center before anyone smells it. At the moonwell, he opened the channel and watched the water hesitate before draining. Then he knelt beside the lodge, pressed 2 fingers into a shrinking seam between the timbers, and showed Valora the frost forming inside it. He still repaired nothing. Instead, he walked beyond the Moonwillow Row and studied the hardened ridges left by the previous winter. Old snow had preserved the shape of every drift. Valora followed without announcing herself. At last, Kaedren pointed toward the lodge. Your walls are not the first problem. Everything around them is carrying the cold where it wants to go. He indicated the entrance. The wind walks directly through those doors. Then the stores. Moisture is climbing into your food. The moonwell. Water remains trapped inside the shallow channel. Finally, the moonwillows. They force snow toward the lodge instead of away from it. Valora's expression hardened. Odric planted those. Kaedren lowered his hand. He built for the winters he knew. The trees stayed where he placed them. The storms changed. She studied him for a long moment. 1 week, she said. After that, I decide whether you see problems or invent them. Kaedren began with the stores. He raised new racks from discarded pine and separated the bundles into smaller sections, leaving narrow spaces for air to move between them. He gave Tovin a short measuring stick. Every gap this wide. Tovin checked the first space. 1, then the next. 2. By the time the last bundle was raised, he had counted aloud more than he had spoken since Ellis died. Kaedren opened the Moonwell trench next. The channel was too shallow to rebuild before winter. We protect only what must not fail, he told Valora. The well, the kitchen, and the birthing den. That afternoon, Ezra Fenlo arrived carrying goat milk, 2 loaves, and unwanted news. Varkas Dreadmore has been asking about Frost Hollow's new rogue. Her eyes dropped to the bread still hidden inside Tovin's coat. Should I leave 1 loaf? Leave both, Valora answered. Outside, Kaedren began driving stakes into the frozen ground, far beyond the lodge. Valora watched the distance between them. What are you building? Kaedren looked toward the darkening northwest sky. the only thing that will keep your doors open when the great frost tries to bury them. Kaedren set the first moonwillow post well beyond the lodge, then measured the second by pace rather than guesswork. The barrier rose in an open L shape. Its taller arm faced the northwest. The shorter arm shielded the path linking the lodge, livestock shelter, and birthing den. He wove the branches loosely enough for air to pass between them. Tovin watched him leave another narrow opening. Shouldn't a wall have no holes? A wall against teeth should, Kaedren answered. A wall against wind must let some of it through. Fresh moonwillow carried Frost Hollow's familiar scent. Even beneath ordinary snowfall, a wolf could follow it when tracks disappeared. Before the final posts were secured, riders appeared beyond the gate. Varkas Dreadmore dismounted beneath Grimscar's black standard. 2 warriors remained behind him, one of them Brannick Voss. Varkas examined the unfinished barrier and smiled. So this is the rogue's wall. He pressed one boot against a post. It will catch enough snow to bury your lodge. If I place it too close, Kaedren said. You are right. Varkas's smile faded. He turned toward Valora. Since when does a homeless wolf become Frost Hollow's engineer? Valora did not look away from the survey stakes. Kaedren Thornwright is my acting winter foreman until his work proves him wrong. The announcement silenced the watching pack. Even Kaedren stopped moving. Varkas gathered his reins. Your foreman will still need my freight road when the mountains close. If you have terms, Valora replied, send them in writing. After Grimscar's riders left, Tovin stared after them. What if he is right? Kaedren lifted another branch. Then we change it before the storm proves him right. The storm did not wait long. A hard squall struck Frost Hollow 2 days later. Kaedren tied wool strips across the barrier and watched them snap upward. The center had been woven too tightly. Wind climbed over it, curled downward, and drove loose snow toward the lodge entrance. One panel tore free and struck the frame. Inside the new offset passage, pregnant Mirith stopped at the sharp turn. Darkness filled the corner ahead. She backed away, growling, and nearly tore the gate from its hinge. On the distant ridge, Grimscar scouts watched Kaedren's system fail. He offered no defense. He seized the cutters and removed part of the center weaving. Valora studied the twisting wool. Lay the next branches diagonally, she said. Make the wind spread before it reaches the opening. Together, they widened Mirith's passage and hung a lantern inside the turn. The next gust entered the willow, divided, and reached the lodge without its former force. A wall that stops everything becomes another cliff, Kaedren said. The wind only needs to lose its strength. Valora handed him the cutters. Your barrier. Your wind. For the first time, she smiled. Then we repair both. That evening, an official rider entered Frost Hollow. Territorial Inspector Orvin Tallis had come to decide whether Kaedren's system would save the pack, or quietly kill it before winter arrived. Orvin Tallis dismounted, without admiring the moonwillow wall. He pressed one hand into the bedding inside the protected den, lifted a bundle from the winter stores, and stood beneath the new vent until the moving air touched his face. A warm den can still kill wolves, he said. Kaedren waited. Trap enough moisture and concentrated scent in one room, and fear will turn into aggression. Bedding packed too deep can heat beneath the surface. Meat can spoil from the center. A poorly sealed moonwell can pull dirt into the drinking water. Orvin pointed toward the canvas planned for the sleeping room, then toward the metal coupling where the water channel crossed into open air. That can burn. That can freeze. Kaedren did not defend the work. What do you require? Proof. For 3 weeks, Frost Hollow would record morning and evening temperatures, firewood use, food consumption, bedding moisture, milk production, drainage time, ice formation, pack agitation, and every involuntary shift. Valora hung a fresh ledger beside the kitchen door. She placed the first pencil in Tovin's hand. Write what happens, she told him. Not what anyone hopes happened. The next failure appeared before the ledger's first page was half filled. Kaedren's new chinking contracted during 2 cold nights. Fine cracks opened between the lodge timbers, and wool held against the wall fluttered in the returning draft. He reached for a scraper. "Too much clay," Valora said. Kaedren looked at her. "My father sealed lambing sheds. Use more animal hair, chopped straw, and scratch the first layer before laying the second." They removed the failed mixture together. The new chinking held. Days later, Kaedren searched the storage loft for a heat curtain and found a folded canvas sheet stitched around the edges with dark leather. His fingers stopped on the seam. Illis made this. He began measuring where to cut it. Valora took the knife from his hand. "Then we do not cut it." They hung the entire sheet between the sleeping room and the main lodge without removing a single stitch. Illis checked a child's wrist before she checked the fire, Kaedren said quietly. Valora smoothed one corner of the canvas. Odric placed 2 cups beside the stove every morning, even when he drank alone. The next morning, 2 cups stood near the fire. Neither asked who had placed the second. For several days, the numbers improved. The lodge held warmth. The stores remained dry. Firewood use fell. Then the first true cold snap struck. Every trough ran empty. The buried channel remained open, but the exposed metal coupling had frozen solid exactly where Orvin warned it would. Kaedren stared at the useless pipe while thirsty wolves gathered behind him. For the first time since entering Frost Hollow, he wondered whether one mistake would be enough for Valora to send his pups back into the cold. Kaedren knelt beside the frozen coupling and pressed his palm against the metal. "I missed it," he said. Valora did not tell him the rest of the system had worked. She did not remind him that the lodge was warmer or that the food remained dry. She picked up an axe and struck the ice. "Then we fix what you missed." Kaedren looked at her once, then reached for the shovel. They lowered the drainage point, cleared the trapped water, and built a wooden box around the coupling. Dry wool filled the inner space. Tarred cloth covered the outside. Kaedren left a narrow opening beneath the roof. Valora noticed. "For air? For moisture," he said. "Trap it inside and the insulation becomes ice." They worked until the lodge windows darkened and the pack had gone quiet. Near midnight, Valora returned carrying 2 cups of hot chicory. Kaedren accepted one without looking at her. "I said I would fix Frost Hollow. The water still froze." "You promised to repair it," Valora said. "You never promised to know every answer before the problem spoke." The words remained with him after the cup was empty. At sunrise, the moonwell flowed. The trough filled. When the animals finished drinking, the line emptied itself completely. Only then did Kaedren understand what Valora had been measuring. Not whether he failed, whether he stayed until the failure was gone. Life inside Frost Hollow changed through smaller things. Valora learned that Neris's hunger cry rose sharply, while her cold cry came in broken little breaths. Before long, the child reached for Valora's coat whenever she crossed the room. Kaedren began leaving his gloves beside the stove, where Valora could warm her hands after checking the outdoor stores. More than once, she recorded the evening numbers with Neris asleep against her shoulder. One afternoon, Tovin looked toward Odric's unfinished cradle. "Why don't you have pups?" Valora's pencil stopped. "Some dens are prepared but never filled." Tovin glanced at Neris sleeping beneath the rough wooden rail. "That one is filled now." Valora said nothing. The following morning, a piece of bread remained untouched beside Tovin's bowl. He had gone to sleep believing it would still be there when he woke. After 3 weeks, the ledger formed its own argument. Frost Hollow burned less wood, consumed less food, and remained warmer and drier. The moonwell did not freeze again. Orvin Tallis returned, read every page and closed the ledger. "It is working," he admitted. That afternoon, Varkas Dreadmore arrived carrying a written demand. When the Great Frost closed the mountains, Grimscar would deny Frost Hollow access to its freight road, unless Valora surrendered part of the moonwell and the spring grazing territory. "No," she said. Farkas left without bargaining. Kaedren waited until the riders disappeared. How long can Frost Hollow survive without the road? 19 days under the old numbers. Kaedren pulled the ledger closer. The raised stores have reduced spoilage. The lodge is burning less wood, and the moonwell is no longer losing water to ice. If we tighten the rations and preserve the remaining milk, those improvements give us 7 more days. He studied the darkening sky. Prepare for 26. Veilora wrote the number beneath the final entry. Before she could draw a line beneath it, every bird above Frost Hollow disappeared. The birds vanished first. By midday, Frost Hollow's milk goats had turned their backs to the northwest and refused to graze. Wolves paced without reason. Their ears remained tilted toward a silence no human ear could hear. Then the air grew heavy, and the wind stopped. Kaedren looked toward the dark line of trees. "No more improvements," he said. "From now on, everything is for survival." Frost Hollow moved at once. Moonwillow marker posts were driven along every path linking the lodge, moonwell, stores, and birthing den. Veilora soaked strips of cloth in oil, carrying the communal scent of the pack, and tied one to each post. Guide ropes were secured between the buildings. Water vessels were filled and covered. The raised food stores were divided into protected reserves. Extra lanterns were hung inside the offset entrance. Pups and elders were moved behind Illis's canvas. Pregnant wolves received the driest section of the den. Those most likely to lose control during a forced shift were separated from the frightened young. A repair bag waited beside the lodge door. Tovin watched Kaedren test the guide rope. "Why do we need the posts if we have this?" "The rope stops you from drifting," Kaedren said. "The posts tell you whether you are still traveling somewhere." While clearing the old tool shed, Veilora found a weathered stake carved with Odric's handmark. She carried it to the first position outside the lodge and drove it deepest. Kaedren said nothing. Later, he reinforced the repair bag with a dark leather strap Illis had sewn years before. The dead were no longer being preserved in untouched objects. Their hands were becoming part of Frost Hollow's protection. Near sunset, Ezra Fenlow stopped on her journey south and placed fresh goat milk on the kitchen table. Her gaze paused on the 2 cups beside the stove. She left without mentioning them. The warning arrived shortly afterward. Orvin Tallis had written only what mattered. The great frost would strike before dawn. Once the white silence began, no wolf should leave shelter. Pack links would weaken. Familiar scents would disappear. Healing would slow. That night, Kaedren checked every moonwillow lashing once more. Veilora joined him beneath the silent sky. For weeks, their wolves had grown quieter whenever they stood close, as though recognizing something neither human heart was ready to name. Veilora still feared that wanting another life meant betraying Odric. Kaedren feared that accepting warmth would make him depend on a home that could still be taken away. "What will you do when winter ends?" she asked. Kaedren pulled another knot tight. "The barrier will need rebuilding in spring." "I did not ask what Frost Hollow would need." His hands stopped. "I asked whether you meant to remain." Before he could answer, the first blast struck. The moonwillow barrier groaned. The lodge shook. Every wolf in Frost Hollow gasped as the pack link vanished at once. Outside, the settlement disappeared beneath the white silence. The great frost had arrived, and every promise Kaedren had made was about to face judgment. The great frost tested Frost Hollow one promise at a time. The moonwillow barrier bowed beneath the first violent gusts, but its loose branches released enough wind to remain standing. Snow gathered beyond it instead of against the lodge doors. The offset passage broke the direct force before it reached the livestock shelter. At the moonwell, water filled the trough and drained before ice could seize the channel. The raised food stores remained dry. Behind Illis's canvas, Tovin and Neris slept in warmth, while the main lodge trembled around them. Kaedren and Veilora crossed between the buildings clipped to the guide rope. Ordinary scent vanished within moments. but the moonwillow posts held Frost Hollow's communal trace long enough to guide a wolf from one marker to the next. The pack link remained silent, leaving every wolf alone inside his own mind. By midday, the nearest marker post disappeared beneath the rising drift. The cloth on the next one still moved. Late that afternoon, a dull pounding reached Kaedren from beyond the barrier. He fastened himself to the rope and followed the posts into the white silence. Near the second marker, he found Brannick Voss half buried in snow. His horse was gone. His cheeks had turned white, and ice covered his lashes. Kaedren pulled him free. "I saw the cloth," Brannick whispered. "Couldn't smell Frost Hollow. Couldn't feel Grimscar. I just kept walking toward the next strip." Kaedren carried him inside, without mentioning the laughter on the ridge. When Brannick woke beside the stove, his hands were wrapped in wool. "Grimscar's northern shelter is failing," he said through shaking breaths. The wind cut straight through it. Water froze before midday. Livestock are dying. Wolves are packed into one corner because they can't feel where anyone else is. His gaze moved toward Illis's canvas, the steaming trough bucket and the marker cloth hanging beside the door. The preparations he had mocked were the only reason he was alive. As the second night dragged into the third, Mireth's first scream rose from the birthing den. Velora reached her before the next contraction. "The pup is early," Mireth gasped. Velora examined her and felt the position. Turned wrong. Healer Thalen Mossword could not cross the buried roads. Velora washed her hands with warm water from the working moonwell. She tied Mireth's tail aside and began turning the trapped pup exactly as Thalen had once taught her. Tovin held the lantern. His hands shook badly enough to make the light jump across the walls. "Do not watch the blood," Velora told him. "Watch her eyes. She needs to see someone who is not afraid." Kaedren returned from checking the barrier as the final pull began. Together, he and Velora brought the pup onto the dry bedding. The newborn did not breathe. Velora cleared his mouth. Kaedren rubbed his chest with clean straw. Without being asked, Tovin placed a dry cloth into Velora's hand. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the pup drew a thin, broken breath. Mireth sobbed. "Oren!" she whispered. From the lodge, Nerys began crying. Still weak from frostbite, Brannick pushed Audric's unfinished cradle closer to the stove and warmed a cup of milk. The wolf who had mocked Frost Hollow was now helping keep Kaedren's daughter alive. Every earlier choice had entered the birthing den with them. Dry bedding protected Oren. The lantern lit Velora's hands. The widened passage kept the animals calm. The moonwell provided clean water. Illis's canvas held the heat. Audric's cradle sheltered Nerys. For one brief moment, Frost Hollow believed the storm had spent its worst strength. Then the wind changed direction. A sharp crack split the night. The main northern lashing on the moonwillow barrier snapped. If the barrier fell, the lodge entrance would disappear beneath the snow before morning. Kaedren reached for the guide rope. Velora caught the other end before he could ask. Their hands met over the knot exactly as they had in the moment the story began. "No one else knows the barrier," he said. "I know." He fastened the rope around his waist, lifted the repair bag, and stepped into the white silence. The storm erased him almost immediately. Kaedren crawled from marker to marker, feeling for each post when sight failed. The first stood firm. The second leaned beneath the drift. The third had snapped. Beyond it, the broken moonwillow lattice thrashed like a living thing. Kaedren reached for the loose frame. A gust tore it sideways and slammed it into his chest. He fell face first into the snow. The repair bag burst open. Iron tools scattered across the drift, but Illis's leather strap caught around his wrist before the bag could disappear into the storm. Inside the lodge, Velora felt the guide rope go still. "Kaedren?" No answer crossed the white silence. Then 3 sharp pulls reached her hands. "Give more line." Velora released the rope slowly. Kaedren recovered 1 hammer and a length of binding cord. Rebuilding the barrier was impossible. Instead, He dragged a spare moonwillow pole across the broken section and secured it as a cross brace. It did not need to survive the winter. It needed to survive the night. When the brace finally held, Kaedren tugged twice. Valora pulled. A shadow emerged from the storm on one knee and one hand. She caught him beneath the arms. "It will hold until morning," he said. Valora looked toward the shaking barrier. Morning is enough. By the fourth morning, the wind weakened. Every frost-hollow wolf remained alive. Oren had only a pale patch of frost damage along one ear. The moonwell still flowed. The food remained dry. The lodge doors opened without hours of digging. Kaedren walked the battered territory carrying a notebook. "One northern brace was too light," he said. "2 marker posts need deeper foundations. The coupling cover needs a steeper roof." Valora watched him write. "You counted everything that failed before counting what survived. A weakness should not be allowed to hide behind success." When the roads reopened, Orvin Tallis arrived with Thalen Mossword and leaders from the neighboring packs. Orvin read the ledger, checked the bedding, measured the remaining food, and examined the moonwell. Frost Hollow stayed warmer, used fewer supplies, and maintained clean water, he announced. The separated dens prevented the panic shifts that injured wolves elsewhere. Brannick stepped forward. "I would be dead without those marker posts." Varkas arrived last. Grimscar had lost livestock and part of its northern shelter. He offered no apology. "How far is the barrier from the lodge?" he asked. Kaedren answered. "And why leave space between the branches? So the wind loses strength instead of climbing over a solid wall." Varkas looked across the snow. "Show me." Kaedren walked beside him without mockery. After the visitors left, Valora placed a written agreement on the office desk. Its final clause guaranteed that Tovin and Neris would always have a home in Frost Hollow, even if Kaedren never chose Valora. Kaedren read the agreement twice. It granted him a permanent share of Frost Hollow's trade income, authority over winter systems and structural work, the title of Pack Warden, and a voice on the ruling council. The final clause remained unchanged. Tovin and Neris would belong to Frost Hollow under its protection, whether Kaedren stayed, left, or refused every other term. He looked up at Valora. "Why would you surrender part of something that belongs to you?" "I am not giving you what is mine," she said. "I am naming what you already carried." Kaedren signed. That night, they sat beside the stove with Odric's 2 cups between them. "I came here asking for milk," Kaedren said. "I never meant to owe you a life. You owe me nothing." Valora placed 1 cup in his hands. "But there is a life here, Kaedren. You may share it if you choose. I'll stay until the snow disappears. Stay until the grass returns." He looked toward the room where his children slept, safe without any promise he might make to her. Longer than that. Only then did their wolves answer what their hearts had already chosen. The bond came quietly, not as an order, but as recognition. By spring, Frost Hollow rebuilt the Moonwillow barrier stronger and looser. Other packs copied its raised stores, draining moonwell lines, scented markers, and protected dens. They called it the Frost Hollow Winter Plan. Varkas did not attend Kaedren and Valora's quiet mating ceremony. He sent a bundle of straight moonwillow poles. One afternoon, Tovin asked, "Do I have to call you something different?" Valora shook her head. "Never say anything you do not mean." Weeks later, he slipped near Odric's marker stake. "Ma, Valora." She helped him stand and pretended not to hear the unfinished word. Later, Neris took her first steps across the lodge floor toward Valora. "Ma." Valora knelt, but did not reach for her. She let the child finish the distance herself. Outside, the repaired barrier bent in the spring wind. The lodge doors stood open. Safe Pack members moved between the stores, Moonwell, and Birthing Den. Kaedren studied the new posts. Frost Hollow still needs work. Valora handed him the 2nd cup. "Good. You promised to stay while there was work." Frost Hollow had not survived because the Great Frost showed mercy. It survived because every weakness was found before the storm could exploit it. And Kaedren finally understood that a true home was not something he had to earn again every morning.